Chapter 24 of Gray Lensman by E. Smith. Chapter 24. "They are not fools, I am not sure," Kimball had said, and when the last force ball, his last means of intergalactic communication, went dead, the first of Boskonia became very unsure indeed. The patrol undoubtedly had something new. He himself had had glimpses of it, but what was it? That Jalti's base was gone was obvious. That Boskonia's hold upon the Tellurian galaxy was gone followed as a corollary. That the patrol was or would soon be wiping out Boskonia's regional and planetary units was a logical inference. Star, that accursed director of Lensmen, must have, succeeded in stealing Jalte's records to be willing to destroy out of hand the base which had housed them. Nor could Boskonia do anything to help the underlings, now that the long-awaited attack upon Jarnavon itself was almost certainly coming. Let them come. Boskonia was ready. Or was it? Quite. Jalte's defenses had been strong, but they had not withstood that unknown weapon even for seconds. Kimball called a joint meeting of Boskonia and the Academy of Science. Coldly and precisely he told them everything that he had seen. Discussion followed. "Negative matter, beyond a doubt," a scientist summed up the consensus of opinion. "It has long been surmised that in some other, perhaps hyperspatial universe, there must exist negative matter of mass sufficient to balance the positive material of the universe we know. It is conceivable that by hyperspatial explorations and manipulations the Tellurians have discovered that other universe and have transported some of its substance into ours." "They can manufacture it?" Kimball demanded. "The probability that such material can be manufactured is exceedingly small," was the studied reply. "An entirely new mathematics would be necessary. In all probability they found it already existent." "We must find it also, then, and at once." "We will try. Bear in mind, however, that the field is large, and do not be optimistic for an early success. Note also that the substance is not necessary, perhaps not even desirable, in a defensive action." "Why not?" "Because by directing pressors against such a bomb, Jalte actually pulled it into his base, precisely where the enemy wished it to go. As a surprise attack against those ignorant of its true nature, such a weapon would be effective indeed. But against us it will prove a boomerang. All that is needful is to mount tractor heads upon pressor bases, and thus drive the bomb back upon those who send them." It did not occur, even to the coldest scientist of them all, that bomb had been of planetary mass. Not one of the Ike suspected that all that remained of the entire world upon which Jalte's base had stood was a handful of meteorites. "Let them come, then," the first of Boskonia announced grimly. "Their dependence upon a new and supposedly unknown weapon explains what would otherwise be insane tactics. With that weapon impotent, they cannot possibly win a long war waged so long from their bases. We can match them ship for ship and more, and our supplies and munitions are close at hand. We will wear them down, blast them out. The Tellurian galaxy shall yet be ours." Admiral Haynes spent almost every waking hour setting up and knocking down tactical problems in the practice tank, and gradually his expression changed from one of strained anxiety to one of pleased satisfaction. He went over to his sealed band transmitter, called all communications officers, and ordered, Each vessel will direct its longest range detector at highest possible power centrally upon the objective galaxy. The first observer to find enemy activity will report it instantly to us here. We will send out a general CB, at which every vessel will cease blasting at once, remaining motionless until further orders." He then called Kinnison. "Look here." He directed the attention of the younger man into the reducer, which now represented intergalactic space with a portion of the second galaxy filling one edge. "I have a solution, but its practicability depends upon whether or not it calls for the impossible from you, Warsaw, and your Rigelians. You remarked at the start that I knew my tactics. I wish that I knew more, or at least could be certain that Boskonia and I agree upon what constitutes good tactics. I feel quite safe in assuming, however, that we shall meet their grand fleet well outside the galaxy." "Why?" asked the startled Kinnison. "If I were Eichmill, I'd pull every ship I had in around Jarnavon and keep it there. They can't force engagement with us." "Poor tactics. The very presence of their fleet out in space will force us to engage, and decisively at that. From his viewpoint, if he defeats us there, that ends it. If he loses, that is only his first line of defense. His observers will have reported fully. He will have invaluable data upon which to work, and much time before even his outlying fortresses can be threatened. From our viewpoint, we cannot refuse battle if his fleet is there. It would be suicidal for us to enter that galaxy, leaving intact outside it a fleet as powerful as that one is bound to be." "Why? Harrying us from the rear might be bothersome, but I don't see how it could be disastrous." "Not that. They could and would attack Tellus." "Oh, I never thought of that. But couldn't they anyway? 2 fleets?" "No, he knows that Tellus is very strongly held, and that this is no ordinary fleet. He will have to concentrate everything he has upon either one or the other. It is almost inconceivable that he would divide his forces." "QX, I said that you're the brains of the outfit, and you are." "Thanks, lad. At the first sign of detection, we stop. They may be able to detect us, but I doubt it, since we are looking for them with special instruments. But that's immaterial. What I want to know is, can you and your crew split the fleet, make 2 big hollow hemispheres of it, let this group of ambers represent the enemy? Since they know that we will have to carry the battle to them, they will probably be in fairly close formation. Set your 2 hemispheres, the reds, there and there. Close in, making a sphere like this, englobing their whole fleet. Can you do it?" Kinnison whistled through his teeth. A long, low, melodious whistle. "Yes, but Klono's brazen claws, Chief. Suppose they catch you at it." "How can they? If you were using detectors instead of double-ended tight-beam binders, how many of our own vessels could you locate?" "That's right, too. Less than 1% of them. They couldn't tell that they were being englobed until after it was done. They could, however, globe up inside us. Yes, and that would give them the tactical advantage of position," the Admiral admitted. "We probably have, however, enough superiority in firing power, if not in actual tonnage, to make up the difference. Also, we have speed enough, I think, so that we could retire in good order. But you are assuming that they can maneuver as rapidly and as surely as we can, a condition which I do not consider at all probable. If, as I believe much more likely, they have no better Grand Fleet operations than we had in Helmholtz's star cluster. If they haven't the equivalent of you and Warsaw and this supertank here, then what?" "In that case, it'd be just too bad. Just like pushing baby chicks into a pond." Kinnison saw the possibilities clearly enough after they had been explained to him. "How long will it take you?" "With Warsaw and both full crews of Rigelians, I would guess it at about 10 hours. 8 to compute and assign positions, and 2 to get there." "Fast enough. Faster than I would have thought possible. Oil up your calculating machines and simplexes and get ready." In due time, the enemy fleet was detected, and detection was confirmed. The cease blasting signal was sent out. Civilization's prodigious fleet stopped dead hanging motionless in space with its nearest units at the tantalizing limit of detectability from the warships awaiting them. For 8 hours, 200 Rigelians stood at whirring calculators, each solving course and distance problems at the rate of 10 per minute. 2 hours or less of the free flight, and Haines rejoiced audibly in the perfection of the 2 red hemispheres shown in his reducer. The 2 immense bowls flashed together, rim to rim. The sphere began inexorably to contract. Each ship put out a red K6T screen as a combined battle flag and identification, and the greatest naval engagement of the age was on. It soon became evident that the Boskonians could not maneuver their forces efficiently. Their fleet was too huge, too unwieldy for their operations officers to handle. Against an equally uncontrollable mob of battlecraft, it would have made a showing, but against the carefully planned, chronometer-timed attack of the patrol, individual actions, however courageous or however desperate, was useless. Each red-sheathed destroyer hurtled along a definite course at a definite force of drive for a definite length of time. Orders were strict. No ship was to be lured from its course, pace, or time. They could, however, fight en passant with their every weapon if occasion arose, and occasion did arise some thousands of times. The units of Grand Fleet flashed inward, lashing out with their terrible primaries at everything in space not wearing the crimson robe of civilization, and whatever those beams struck did not need striking again. The warships of Boskone fought back. Many of the patrol's defensive screens blazed hot enough to almost mask the scarlet beacons. Some of them went down. A few patrol ships were englobed by the concerted action of 2 or 3 subfleet commanders more cooperative or more farsighted than the rest, and were blasted out of existence by an overwhelming concentration of power. But even those vessels took toll with their primaries as they went out. Few indeed were the Boskonians who escaped through holes thus made. At a predetermined instant, each dreadnought stopped, to find herself one nut of an immense red flaming hollow sphere of ships packed almost screen to screen. And upon signal, every primary projector that could be brought to bear hurled bolt after bolt, as fast as the burned-out shells could be replaced, into the ragingly incandescent inferno, which that sphere's interior instantly became. For 200 million discharges such as those will convert even a very large volume of space into something utterly impossible to describe. The raving torrents of energy subsided, and keen-eyed observers swept the scene of action. Nothing was there except jumbled and tumbled white-hot wreckage. A few vessels had escaped during the closing in of the sphere, but none inside it had survived this climactic action. Not 1 in 5,000 of Boskone's massed fleet made its way back to Dark Jarnavon. Maneuver 58, hype! And Grand Fleet shot away. There was no waiting, no hesitation. Every course and time had been calculated and assigned. Into the second galaxy the scarcely diminished armada of the patrol hurtled, to Jarnavon's solar system, around it. Once again the crimson sheathing of civilization's messengers almost disappeared in blinding coruscants as the outlying fortresses unleashed their mighty weapons. Once again a few ships, subjected to such concentrations of force as to overload their equipment, were lost. But this conflict, although savage in its intensity, was brief. Nothing mobile could endure for long the utterly hellish energies of the primaries, and soon the armored planetoids, too, ceased to be. Maneuver 59, hype! And Grand Fleet closed in upon somber Jarnavon itself. 60. It rolled in space, forming an immense cylinder, the doomed planet the midpoint of its axis. 61. Tractors and pressors leaped out from ship to ship, from ship to shore. The patrol did not know whether or not the scientists of the Ike could render their planet inertialess, but now it made no difference. Planet and fleet were for the time being one rigid system. 62. Blast! And against the world-girdling battlements of Jarnavon there flamed out in all their appalling might the dreadful beams against which the defensive webs of battleships and of mobile citadels alike had been so pitifully inadequate. But these which they were attacking now were not the limited installations of a mobile structure. The Ike had at their command all the resources of a galaxy. Their generators and conductors could be of any desired number and size. Hence, Eichmill, in view of prior happenings, had strengthened the defenses of his planet to a point which certain of his fellows derided as being beyond the bounds of sanity or reason. Now those unthinkably powerful screens were being tested to the utmost. Bolt after bolt of quasi-solid lightning struck against them, splitting mile-long sparks in baffled fury as they raged to ground. Plain and encased in Q-type helixes they came, biting, tearing, gouging. Often and often, under the thrust of half a dozen or more, local failures appeared, but these were only momentary, and not even the newly devised shells of the projectors could stand the load long enough to penetrate effectively Boscone's indescribably capable defenses. Nor were the enemy's offensive weapons less capable. Rods, cones, planes, and shears of pure force bored, cut, stabbed, and slashed. Bombs and dirigible torpedoes, charged to the skin with duodec, sought out the red-cloaked ships. Beams, sheathed against atmosphere in Q-type helixes, crashed against and through their armor. Beams of an intensity almost to rival that of the patrol's primary weapons, and of 100 times their effective aperture. And not singly did those beams come. 8, 10, 12 at once. They clung to and demolished dreadnought after dreadnought of the expeditionary force. Eichmill was well content. "We can hold them, and we are burning them down," he gloated. "Let them loose their negative matter bombs. Get the analysis of those beams. Build them. They are burning out projectors, which means that they cannot keep this up indefinitely. They will have to retire, what there are left of them, for more munitions, and when they come back, we will blast them out of space." He was wrong. Grand Fleet did not stay there long enough so that even the projectors of the Ike could destroy more than a few thousands of ships. For even while the cylinder was forming, Kinnison was in rapid but careful calculation with Thorndyke, checking intrinsic velocities, directions, and speeds. "QX, Vern. Cut!" he yelled. 2 planets, one well within each end of the combat cylinder, went inert at the word, resuming instantaneously their diametrically opposed intrinsic velocities, each of some 30 miles per second. And it was these 2 very ordinary but utterly irresistible planets, instead of the negative matter bombs with which the Ike were prepared to cope, which hurtled then along the axis of the immense tube of warships toward Jarnavon. Whether or not the Ike could make their planet inertialess had never been found out. Free or inert, the end would have been the same. "Every Y-14M officer of every ship of the patrol, attention!" Haines ordered. "Don't get all tensed up. Take it easy. There's lots of time. Any time within a second after I give the word will be plenty of time. Cut." The 2 worlds rushed together, doomed Jarnavon squarely between them. Haines snapped out his order as the 3 were within 2 seconds of contact, and as he spoke, all the tractors and all the pressors were released. The ships of the patrol were already free. None had been inert since leaving Jalti's X-planet, and thus could not be harmed by flying debris. The planets touched. They coalesced squishingly at first, the encircling warships drifting lightly away before a cosmically violent blast of superheated atmosphere. Jarnavon burst open, all the way around and splattered, billions upon billions of tons of hot core magma being hurled afar in gouts and streamers. The two planets, crashing through what had been a world, met, crunched, crushed together in all the unimaginable momentum of their masses and velocities. They subsided crashingly. Not merely mountains, but entire halves of the worlds disrupted and fell in such gargantuan paroxysms as the eye of man has never elsewhere beheld. And every motion generated heat. The kinetic energy of translation of two worlds became heat. Heat added to heat, piling up ragingly, frantically, unable to escape. The masses, still falling upon and through and past themselves and each other, melted, boiled, vaporized incandescently. The entire mass, the mass of three fused worlds, began to equilibrate, growing hotter and hotter as more and more of its terrific motion was converted into pure heat. Hotter, hotter, hotter. And as the grand fleet of the Galactic Patrol blasted through intergalactic space toward the first galaxy and home, there glowed behind it a new, small, comparatively cool, and probably short-lived companion to an old and long-established star. End of chapter 24.